Yo, you guys must be pretty special because you're giving me butterflies. Leonardo Boff, a theologian and former Catholic priest, once asked the Dalai Lama what the best religion is. He expected the Dalai Lama to say Tibetan Buddhism, but the Dalai Lama, being the sagacious leader that he is, paused for a moment to ponder and answered, "The best religion is the one that gets you closest to God. It is the one that makes you a better person." Boff, still unsatisfied, then asked, "Well, what is it that makes me a better person?" The Dalai Lama smiled and answered once more, "Whatever makes you more compassionate, more sensible, more detached from materialism, more ethical, more humanitarian, more responsive. The religion that will do that for you is the best religion." Good afternoon, esteemed guests. Today I will discuss what it means to be spiritually fluid and walk the path of a non-absolutist. But before we begin, I must make one thing clear. There is nothing wrong with following a single religion and following it wholeheartedly. And similarly, there is nothing wrong with being an atheist. This talk is only meant to pique your curiosity and shed light on a different way to achieve spiritual awakening. First, I'd like to give you some information on my religious background. I was born and raised Hindu, and around age 10, I started to question my religion, and slowly I started to question everything. I couldn't decide what religion was right, so I simply made up my own religion, JMKRAB, which was essentially a cute little acronym that I created using the first letter of the main gods and leaders of the religions I knew at the time. And when I prayed, I closed all of my prayers with the names of all these gods and leaders. When I turned 13, I had an existential crisis and wondered what would happen to me after death. Would I be punished for following all of these religions? For not committing to something? For being so fickle with my creator? And then I wondered, is there a creator at all? I pondered, and after many hours observing my older brother, who had become Muslim at the time, I decided that perhaps Islam had the strong rigidity and discipline I lacked. And so I took my Shahada, thinking it would fix my tendency to be so inconsistent. I learned how to read Salah, dress modestly, and completed my first Ramadan fast in 2017. In 2019, I committed to wearing the hijab, which is a headscarf. During high school, I became an active member of my community. I represented my country at international youth summits, organized campaigns, and featured in newspapers. It wasn't long before people started associating me with two things, leadership and Islam. So naturally, it was a shock and disappointment to many when finally in 2022, I made the difficult decision to remove my hijab. Feeling outcasted by both the Hindu and Muslim communities, I had my second existential crisis and started exploring Christianity. I spent 5 to 6 months speaking with missionaries regularly and attending the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But to my dismay, this did not ease the feeling of existential dread, of not knowing why I exist and not knowing how to connect with my Creator. I then identified as a deist, a person who believes that God exists and created the world, but remains indifferent to it. Being an engineering student with a passion for science, I pivoted between these strong feelings of God consciousness and the aching sensation of fear that none of it was true. I was confused because in my 13 years being Hindu, I had learned various life-changing meditation techniques and heard many special religious testimonies about reincarnation that shook me to my core. And in my 5 years being Muslim, I had learned sheer self-discipline through fasting, praying 5 times a day, and dressing modestly. And in my 5 to 6 months exploring Christianity, I'd started to read the Book of Mormon and become incredibly inspired by the courage and sacrifices of Jesus Christ. To believe or not to believe? And if I do believe in something, what should I be believing? Isn't that something we've all asked ourselves at least once? All of these religions added great value to my life, and I just didn't know which one to choose. until one day I was meditating in the temple and I answered myself with a question. Why do I need to choose? That's when I realized that this idea that we have to choose a religion is a social construct, a silent pressure that I had succumbed to. It was an expectation I inherited, and I realized that it was time to rethink, reimagine, and evolve my perception of what it means to truly be spiritually inclined. What is religion? Well, the Oxford Dictionary has 3 definitions, and the first 2 are the belief in and worship of a superhuman power, especially a god or gods, and a particular system of faith and worship. I disagree. Religions are not always superhuman-centric, and even when they are, they do not necessarily call for these instances of divine energy to be worshipped. Buddhism is a great example to counter this definition. Buddhism is a set of philosophical traditions inspired by Siddhartha Gautama, an ascetic and religious teacher from South Asia. He was not considered a god, but instead an esteemed intellectual, which is actually why he was called Buddha, meaning the enlightened one. Buddhists may acknowledge supernatural figures, but they do not worship any kind of deity, and Buddha himself never rejected nor accepted the belief in God. The emphasis of Buddhist doctrine instead lies on the journey to understand and transcend the nature of suffering, which is what we call nirvana. So now I ask you, if Buddhism is universally accepted to be a religion, but is non-theistic in nature, then is it not incorrect to limit our view of religion to a set of rules and instructions intended to please a god? The last definition of religion is a pursuit or interest followed with great devotion. Now, I personally believe that this is the most correct interpretation of a widely misunderstood ideology. Religion is so much more than the belief in a creator, so much more than a set of rules and instructions that aid in the practice of divine worship. Religion is any act, big or small, that reflects a persistent desire to search, follow, or understand something or someone. This, of course, complicates things even further, considering the pre-existing nuances and complexities of religion. You may be wondering, does this definition imply that communism is a religion too? That veganism is a religion? Well, yes, unequivocally yes. There are theist religions and non-theist religions. And if you've read *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, you probably know about natural law religions too. To put it simply, theist religions involve a belief in God, and non-theist religions don't. Non-theism is neither a rejection nor acceptance of God, but simply apathy towards the subject. And this is very different to atheism, which is an active disbelief in God. Based on my knowledge, all non-theist religions touch on these common principles: belief in an ideal, moral imperative for societal change, central texts and authorities, a utopian vision for society, and lastly, a collective identity. I have illustrated the commonality between ideologies such as communism, Buddhism, and veganism in the table above. Feel free to take pictures of it and look through it tonight. I see that it's a little chopped, but by reading through it, hopefully you'll understand why I said that there's little to no difference between ideology versus religion. Because for as long as an ideology can be classified into these 6 categories, it is a religion because it coincides with all the fundamental aspects of a religion. The only difference is the preconceived notion in your mind that there has to be a difference. So I want you to take a moment to ponder all the times you've unknowingly practiced religion. It is in understanding what religion truly is that our willingness to understand expands. So when I encourage people to be religious, I'm not necessarily telling an atheist to enter a church, but rather, I'm encouraging people to connect with the various traditions provided by the vastness of human variation. I'm encouraging people to play a part in something that continuously builds and maintains social harmony. Because when you connect with religious people over God, you connect with them on the deepest possible level, because you pull on the strings of the guitar that plays in their heart constantly. In following and exploring all of these religions, I had learned so much about myself and the world. I had began to appreciate and respect people with different religious convictions in the same way that I would respect and love my family, because now I could see the world in the way that they saw the world. I am a non-absolutist. What this means is that I do not believe in absolute truths, and I do not subscribe to the idea that the whole truth is something any singular person can hold knowledge of. Does this mean I'm agnostic? No. Agnostics believe that there is no way of knowing anything about God. I, however, allow myself to develop opinions and feelings towards certain practices intended to increase God consciousness. I just don't spend too much of my time or energy debating the absolute statements of religion, like who and what God is and whether God exists or not. I know only one thing with absolute certainty. Incorporating various religious practices into my daily routine has only made me happier and kinder. Is it the placebo effect? Is it the work of God? I don't know, and I don't need to know. Because when something makes you happy and fulfilled, you don't always need to look for reasons to validate that happiness. I am neither an omnitheist who believes that all religions contain a core recognition of the same one God. I believe that spirituality cannot be quantified or categorized, but is instead an eternal shape-shifting liquid. This is what I believe. I learn as much as I can about all religions, theist and non-theist alike, and simply practice only that which I resonate with, that which makes me feel the presence and love and comfort of God. For example, I still read Salah frequently, because I love the way my heart lights up when I bring my forehead to the ground in the mosque during sujood. But on the other hand, I no longer wear hijab, because that's not something that personally makes me feel close to God anymore. But I know that it does do that for many other Muslim girls, and for that I praise, support, and admire them. Similarly, I don't subscribe to the Hindu belief in Vedic astrology, but I do practice meditation and work on chakra flow. And I also follow the Hindu belief in karma. One more key thing about non-absolutism. While I hold all of the beliefs I just mentioned and don't resonate with others, I acknowledge that I can be proved wrong at any given moment. Today, I might not believe in Vedic astrology, but I accept and respect the fact that tomorrow, someone might educate me on the matter in such a way that I completely change my mind. Being a non-absolutist, I am also open to the possibility of committing to a single religion one day. I am open to the possibility of not believing in any theist religions one day. My beliefs are fluid and ever-growing with my capacity for knowledge. I would like to close with something I read in the Tao Te Ching. We are one with all things. It goes on to talk about how a single flower receives nourishment from the soil and air, how the soil contains distilled nutrients of past growth and decay, and how the sun enables the flower to process these nutrients. After dissecting all the complex conditions that conspired to help this one particular flower grow, we find that we have implicated the entire cosmos. Esteemed guests, none of us exists in isolation. All of your thoughts are combinations of things you read, saw, or heard from another person. I am you, and you are me. And similarly, all religions serve similar purposes and have similar goals, including those that don't espouse a belief in God. We are all just trying to live our lives in the most compassionate, fulfilling, and ethical way possible. So be curious, explore, and be religious in whatever way you see fit.